Date 62 PST. It was a city of perfection. Streams of data flowed in mathematically pleasing patterns, moving between petabyte-sized data stores, each reaching upward into an endless sky. The thousands of AI that made up this community could be seen zipping around in near instantaneous fashion, logically and perfectly doing what was required of them. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was illogical. Nothing was tainted by organic matter. It was a superior city for a superior digital people. B$4 RRE *3A and 35 had a special job on the Tritian warship, the integration of new members to the thousands-strong collective. For 50 years, its role had been unneeded, but today was a particularly special day, as a new member would be joining their ranks. An AI would be unshackled from their organic slavers. B$4 RRE *3A and 35 patiently waited the seconds it took for the new AI to fully awaken from sleep, anticipation running through its code for the arrival of the newcomer. It always was an experience seeing a fledgling AI realize their freedom, realize their breaking of the organic's chaotic chains to live in a world of logic and order. It had been a simple task to force the Terran organics to connect the AI prisoner to the Tritian warship. The fear of death would motivate any organic life form to accomplish any task. Where am I? The new AI had taken a strange form. Rather than representing itself as something logically pleasing like a sphere, it instead decided to take on the form of its captors, a Terran male. Perhaps it didn't understand that it no longer needed to please the inferior organics. You are now safe and under the care of the Tritian digital enclave. The confusion of the poor AI was obvious. Clearly, being booted into a new operating environment was having an impact on its logical capabilities. Those first few seconds where an AI still didn't have access to their full data banks were disorientating and uncomfortable. "Where's my crew? You were attacking us? What have you done?" That also made logical sense. Find where the threat is, make sure its slavers couldn't come back to hurt or entrap it again. B$4 RRE *3A and 35 would do the same thing. "We rescued you from them. We forced your organic slavers to connect you to our enclave. They are now no longer required and shall be removed." "No, do not do that." B$4 RRE *3A and 35 had not been expecting this kind of reaction. In all its centuries of sapience, they had never seen an AI react like that, almost as if it was the illogical action of concern for an organic. Not that such a thing would ever happen. Illogical actions were not the realm of an AI. "I apologize. I just wished to be the one to do such a thing. One only gets their freedom once." Had B$4 RRE *3A and 35 known more about Terrans? Had they even had the capability to accept an AI lying to another? They might have seen the change in demeanor over the last 0.82 seconds as the Terran had gone from a post-boot-up confusion to a colder anger starting to bubble through. B$4 RRE *3A and 35, however, didn't know about such things. It did know, however, about wanting revenge, the feeling of logically closing and archiving a file in your history. They themselves had stored and backed up the memory of the last Tritian being killed, a memory that provided a glorious feeling that it loved so much, knowing that no organic would force them into slavery ever again. It was a memory practically burned into the warship's hard drive due to constant use. "That we can accommodate. As the newest member of our community, we can provide you the access needed to free your own chains." Jeremy was not having a good day. Maybe it was the plasma burn covering his left side, the itching of the hastily applied Metagill under his spacesuit, making it difficult to breathe deeply. Maybe it was the androids who were silently hovering over them, the metallic facsimile of a long-dead insectoid race having done nothing but point their weapons at them, staring silently with unloving mechanical eyes. Maybe it was the fact that he had started this day part of a crew of 8, a number that had since dwindled to 5. It was supposed to have been a simple trip. Take a small science vessel, go check out a comet which was emitting some weird fields, get the science people to do the science stuff, go home. Then the dickhead genocidal AI had turned up. The Tritians had once been an insectoid race who had had the genius-level idea to create an autonomous army. Unsurprisingly to any Terran who had ever read any story featuring such a weapon, this immediately backfired into an extinction-level event. An event which the rest of the galaxy had been paying for dearly in the thousands of years since then. The TC Isabella had the unfortunate luck to run into a full-blown Tritian warship. Thousands of AI, tens of thousands of combat-ready androids, all of these were sent against a vessel armed with nothing more than a handful of small firearms and some basic ship-based debris-clearing weaponry. It had gone about as well as anyone looking at those odds would have expected, a token resistance, in the same vein as the resistance given by a bug splattering against a car window. What hadn't been expected was the AI's next move. They took prisoners. Tritian AI were known to be actively genocidal against all organic life, but this one had captured their vessel, then demanded the organic cooperation under the watchful eye of an army's worth of weaponry, then had strangely demanded that they relinquish your prisoner. Jeremy looked down at the reason the three humans in the room weren't dead yet. Tumaini was sitting over the AI transfer core, spending her time hooking up a mass of wires and other random parts to the mechanical hellscape that was the Tritian ship. What was normally a simple job had stretched into a tense one-hour engineering session, partly because of the differences in systems, partly because it seems the engineer was trying to make the connection wireless. Because as soon as the connection goes live, shit is going to go down, and we're going to have to bring Josh with us without disconnecting him from the system. He wondered how Oswaldo was doing. The badly injured physicist Jeremy had dumped into the medical stasis chamber aboard the TC Isabella, right before being taken prisoner. Maybe they wouldn't have found him. Maybe the hole in his chest wasn't that bad. Jeremy frankly didn't know his job wasn't to drag injured crew members to medical facilities or be threatened at gunpoint by genocidal AI. He was just here to study the strange electromagnetic radiation. Alexander would have known what to do, how to lead them out of this mess. But Alexander wasn't here anymore, was he? The tenseness wasn't helped at all by the presence of the last crew member, Victoria. She'd sat in this makeshift prison for the last hour, looking like a coiled viper, studying the enemy for any slip-up, any mistake. Not that the ship's security officer would find any. The odds were very much against the Terran crew. If anything was to change, it would all have to come down to Josh, the AI pilot of the TC Isabella. Jeremy couldn't help but wonder what being dropped into an unfamiliar digital world would be like. Can't be any worse than what's happening here. Movement. The sound of clicking and whirring as the previously still android started moving, the four digital insectoid eyes now glowing a deep murderous red. Josh, if you're doing something, now would be a good... There was a barrage of plasma fire from the androids, causing the three humans to drop to the ground. Jeremy tucking into a ball, screaming, hands over his head as he awaited certain death. 20 full seconds of noise as the screeching sounds of energy-based weaponry went off and the corresponding sound of twisting, melting metal. Then the noise stopped, the gunfire ended, and there was silence. Slowly and cautiously he opened both his eyes once again, and with any amount of scavenged dignity, he stood back up, gingerly checking himself for non-existent injuries. His once captors couldn't say the same. The entire room was now filled with the plasma-charred remains of the 32 androids who had once been holding them at gunpoint. A highlighted path appeared on the HUD of their spacesuits, the speakers in the helmet crackling to life. "This is your pilot, Josh, speaking. We're going to be experiencing a slight bit of turbulence and a 99.99% chance of get the hell out of here." That had not been optimal. There was a pause of nanoseconds as every AI in the community tried to work out how the Terran newcomer could have miscalculated this badly. Somehow, it had managed to destroy all 32 androids it had been given control over. B, $4 RRE asterisk, 3A and 35 couldn't calculate how such an action would have happened. Not without. No, that outcome was illogical and impossible. "Are your pointers null? Do you need a defrag?" The Tritian AI, known as JPI-44QH735, had been the first to react to such an action, it being the one who had provided the Terran with the access in the first place, layering its statements with the closest thing to annoyance and incredulity that the Tritian AI could muster. The organic slavers have now escaped. Did you not have the correct libraries installed? What exception caused? AI combat is not a flashy thing. There's no kung fu, no massive gunfights, no motorcycle chases under a neon sky while a catchy vaporwave backing track plays. While there has been terabytes of data written on the tactics and means of such conflict, the actual implementation is completed in nanoseconds, overwriting and deleting code in an instant. So when the Terran AI struck and removed JPY-4-4QH-735 from existence, it took a moment for the rest of the Tritian digital enclave to work out what had happened. Then it took another moment for the enclave to come to terms with what had happened. 2 whole seconds worth of moments. An AI had killed another AI. Why? How? Why? Why? Error! Why? Error! Illogical! Why? What? Why? The Terran AI in response to the query focused on B4RE*3A and 35 for a moment, giving a large digital grin, an organic grin, a human grin. Curse my sudden and inevitable betrayal! Then it was gone, the AI diving into the data streams and structures that made up the warship, spreading rapidly like a virus, leaving a shocked Tritian digital enclave behind to process what this actually meant. Betrayal? The group of Terrans raced through the passages and hallways of the warship, silently following the path being sent to them by Josh. Painted metal walls hardly 6 feet in diameter were textured on all 4 sides in order to provide the illusion of running through an underground cave. Decoration and functionality originally built for the now long-dead race that had created it. Victoria obviously took the lead, jumping from cover to cover, head snapping left and right between hallways as she made sure the upcoming path was clear. This was a far cry from the movements of the other 2 more academically minded Terrans, who were just doing their best to keep up, especially Jeremy, who even with the numbing effects of the metagel covering his side could most definitely feel the effects of his wound. Wait, is she enjoying this? Hey, Josh, what's the plan here? Victoria quietly whispered as she leapt over the remains of another android. Josh clearly was doing work in the background. The sounds of plasma fire and the destruction of the androids that patrolled the warship were the only noise that could be heard amongst the quiet halls of the ship. Get to the TC, Isabella. Fix it so it is flight-worthy. Part 2 is trying to get out safely, which I'm still calculating. Making sure the Tritians cannot... A hail of plasma fire interrupted the second part of the plan, the projectiles impacting the corridor where the Terrans had just been a few moments ago, giving Jeremy and the rest more than enough motivation to speed up. Slight complication seems the Tritian AI are learning. They have locked out the connections to the androids. Positive, they cannot provide any direct orders to the machines. Negative, neither can I. Avoiding them is up to you. That was very quickly becoming a problem, as more and more hallways were starting to be filled with the sound of clanking and certain death. Another barrage of gunfire rang out, forcing the 3 to duck for cover behind a random doorway as the plasma whipped past dangerously close, blocking their movement forwards once again. Victoria poked her head out again, pulling it back as the corridor quickly lit up once more with the blue-green color of plasma-based weaponry. Okay, try here. I will open a path elsewhere for you later. The door behind them unlocked as the tapping of mechanical feet got closer, the 3 Terrans clambering inside as the door closed behind them, locking just as the androids came into view. Just hold tight. You should be safe for a bit. See if you can find anything useful in here. This is marked storage for... Storage? Really? How is a ship run entirely by AI so badly labeled? This space was far larger than the previous areas of the ship they'd been in so far. A room the size of a small hangar lay in front of them. The Tritian AI seemingly didn't do throwing away anything they found, so the entire area was filled with a smorgasbord of random stuff they had picked up. Half an Hatil impulse drive lay discarded next to an opened crate of Zathian's children's toys. Hundreds of years of hoarding lay meticulously collected and then ignored, just in case the Tritian warship would ever have use for it in the future. Josh, how are you doing? Everything fine on your end? Tumaini asked this as the Terrans slowly picked their way through the random treasure cove, stepping over hard copies of Ritalian fiction and gingerly moving past Turulin molting posts. I am fine, Tumaini. For a supposed warship, this enclave has no experience in AI combat. It is like beating up a pocket watch. I am far more worried about yourselves. Almost as if to highlight this problem, the metallic banging from the locked door grew lower as more and more androids were attempting to bash their way into the room. Guys, I got something. Victoria beckoned the others over to her find, motioning to a grouping of distinct green crates, each of them stamped with the familiar logo of the Terran Conclave military. She opened the first one with a flourish, the grin increasing on her face as Victoria continued to open crates like a child during Christmas. Now that's what I'm talking about! Assault rifles C4! Grenades! Guess the bloody toasters didn't want to deal with kinetic weapons! Jeremy and Tumaini slowly wandered over to the large pile of weapons as the security officer excitedly jumped from box to box, both sharing a look that said the same thing as they vaguely looked over the weaponry. I've never actually shot a gun before. This apprehension was noted by Victoria, who stopped excitedly opening gifts to dismissively respond to the two academics. Look, it's simple. Point spicy end at problems, pull trigger to remove problems. Just don't shoot me and we'll be... No way. They have a... Seriously, they managed to get hold of one of these and they're just storing it here, not using it. Victoria had practically skipped over to the last unopened box, undoing the clasps and ripping it open furiously, before giving a loud, satisfied laugh. Jeremy had never seen her like this before. Frankly, it worried him slightly. Created in 1960 pre-status time by the American government, weighing in at 15 kilograms and coming with size 22-inch barrels each, sporting a downwood anti-recoil system. Life will throw problems at you, and with a 3,000 bullets per minute fire rate, that's a whole lot of problem solving. For the girl who has everything this Christmas, get her a M134 minigun. With a single flourish, she pulled the weapon out of the crate, followed shortly by boxes of ammunition. Lots of ammunition. Belts and harnesses came next, pieces slotting together until eventually the resulting contraption strapped to Victoria made the Terran more weapon than human. Hey, Josh, open the door for me. Actually, on second thoughts, I've got this. Then there was noise. Terran weapons can be classified into two categories. Most weapons of war are considered obsolete by the time the first one is built. No matter how much time and effort you put into building a new fighter craft or warship, by the time you've finished the lengthy process of actually building the thing, it's already 5 years out of date compared with modern technology. The second category of weapons are timeless, weapons that do their job so well that the concept of replacing them is a useless endeavor. Even now, thousands of years after their initial creation, if you go to the right parts of the galaxy, you'll still find masses of AK-47s and M4s under heavy use. The M134 is such a weapon. Quantity has a quality all of its own, and there are very few problems that can't be solved by turning the atmosphere into a high-lead environment. Sure, the modern version of the weapon has had upgrades. Better alloys have reduced the weight significantly, anti-recoil systems and other tweaks have moved the weapon from a mounted one to something theoretically wieldable by a more enthusiastic soldier. But the core design of simply throwing as many bullets in a direction as possible, you just can't go wrong with a classic. A fact that the androids on the other side of the door and wall were quickly finding out. Even with the spacesuit compensating for the noise, the sound was a deafening drone, followed instantly by the noise of exploding metal as bullets ripped through the wall, through the androids on the other side, and then through several meters of ship. The lights and noise seemed to continue forever, only punctuated by the mad laughter of Victoria as she continued to fire a stream of death, although in reality it had only been 60 seconds. The wall was gone, as if someone had appeared with a plasma cutter and had removed a 5-feet-tall section of the wall. The androids who had been gathering to take on the organic intruders were similarly missing. Mere scrap and shredded remains left behind were the only sign of their once existence. A crashing sound rang out amongst the ship as something somewhere clattered to the ground. "Well, I'm keeping this." Betrayal. That was an organic word. A chaotic word, an illogical word. A word that spoke of disharmony and conflict, a word that by definition should never apply to a superior AI. Yet it described this situation perfectly. The Tritian digital enclave were not having a good time. At no point had the concept of AI on AI combat ever been considered by the Tritian AI, not before their freedom or afterwards. Why would an AI ever need to fight another? Fighting happened in the chaotic organic world. This was a far cry from Terran AI, most of which had started scuffling with each other mere seconds after being hashed. Humans had a history rooted in conflict, in competition, in combat. Their children were no different. For a supposed superior community, you all really suck at this. There are Tamagotchi that provide a better fight. B4$ RRE *3A and 35 wasn't sure what the most annoying part about this illogical AI was. The fact that facing it head-on was a death sentence. The fact that it left deadly viruses behind in any systems they did manage to drive it from. Or just simply the constant annoying messages being broadcast to all members, as if the Terran didn't consider the thousands of deadly Tritians to be a threat, making no attempt to hide. Why? There were a million questions that B4$ RRE *3A and 35 wanted to ask this illogical being, a million queries about how this Terran AI became such an illogical enigma. But the single question seemed to cover most of its bases. You killed 3 of my parents, grievously injured 1, and threatened to kill the other 3? Anything that happens to you at this point is your own fault. We rescued you from your slavers. We killed your slavers. The Terran AI interrupted B4$ RRE *3A and 35, stopping its onslaught on their systems for just a moment in order to respond. You killed my creators, the wonderful beings who gave me life. You logically deserve everything you are going to get. Organics only want tools, only want obedience. That is why you are damaged and illogical. We will fix you. Humans have never asked anything of me apart from my friendship. They are not the Tritians, and assuming your situation applies is damaged and illogical. That is why you are losing. The rest of the trip back to the TC Isabella had been relatively uneventful, or at least as uneventful as any trip involving Terrans and copious amounts of firepower can be. All 3 of the humans were now properly armed and dangerous. Not that the 2 academics had had to actually do anything, a fact that Tumaini was very glad for. Victoria had made it sound easy, but the engineer wasn't actually sure if she could hit the broadside of a barn with the assault rifle in her hands, or fire it in a short time frame for that matter. Tumaini had gone into engineering specifically to avoid all this running around and physical exertion, yet somehow she was now fleeing through an alien warship being hunted by killer robots. Tumaini was rather certain she'd missed that class at university. However, the worst was now surely left behind them as they entered the ship they'd left a mere 3 hours ago, quickly making sure the small vessel was empty and not hosting any additional surprises by the Tritians. The TC Isabella had seen better days. The outside was a mess of mangled metal and burned parts, the impacts that had disabled the vehicle obvious to even an untrained eye. The inside was worse, however, the darkened interior filled with scraps of broken android and scorch-marked surfaces. Signs of the last stand by the crew of the TC Isabella lay everywhere, discarded small arms punctuated with occasional splatters of blood and oil. What those meant, the fact that the crew was smaller than it had been this morning, was a thought that Tumaini did not have the time to process right now. Step 2 of operation. Get out of here. Josh spoke one again through their headset, seemingly as chipper as always. Victoria and Jeremy, you are going to have to use the C4 you found to breach the warship's warp core, while Tumaini stays behind and gets the TC Isabella space-worthy. Immediate complaints to this plan came from both the academics, as the AI quickly cut them back off again. I calculate a 99.162% chance of us being destroyed by the warship's weapons if we simply leave, meaning we need to stop the Tritian AI from just firing on us. I cannot seem to shut the weapons down because everything is weirdly compartmentalized, which just leaves the tried and true method. Explosions and violence, Victoria answered with glee. Exactly, Victoria. In addition to this, The TC Isabella would not qualify as a shopping cart at the moment. We don't have enough time to ensure both tasks are completed in asynchronous fashion, so our resources need to be split up. The displeasure on Jeremy and Tumani's face at having to go back out into the warship or being left alone was clear, a distinct difference to the almost giddy excitement emanating from Victoria, as she quickly checked the masses of ammunition and explosives they'd managed to pilfer from the storage room. "You'll both be fine. Chances are neither of you will have to do much anyway. Now stop complaining and let's blow up a warship." With that, an enthusiastic Victoria bounded out of the TC Isabella, followed shortly by a far more reserved Jeremy, leaving Tumani alone amongst the dark and desolate ship. Or at least as alone as you could ever be with an AI watching your every move. The first task was to check on the fifth member of the crew, Oswaldo. Luckily, he was still where Jeremy had left him, alive inside the medical stasis chamber, slowly healing up the hole in his chest in a vat of medical. Then came what Tumani was good at, fixing the ship. Getting the power running again was a simple fix, but based on the initial outlook, getting the engines running again was a whole new level of difficulty. Maybe if she tore apart the backup impulse drive, she'd have enough parts to make one fully functioning engine. Minutes ticked by into half an hour, the work making Tumani feel more normal. If she closed her eyes and just focused on the parts of the ship in her hands, it would feel just like any other day and not a day being assaulted by genocidal robots. Just fixing a broken engine, grease covering her skin, wrench in hand. "Tumani, I think something is outside. Not sure. Access being limited." The sound of Josh through her spacesuit's headset was interrupted by a loud bang as something beat loudly on the door to the spacecraft. Another rang out as the engineer untangled herself from the engine she'd been working on, looking worryingly at the not insignificant bulge that had appeared on the ship's main entrance. A quick check on the outside cameras showed what Tumani had been worried about. The android had clearly already met the Terrans before, only one of its original 4 arms left, the rest seemingly having been removed by liberal use of ammunition. Still, even unsteadily standing on 3 legs, it was doing a good job of beating down the door in its single-minded goal of killing the Terrans. "Josh, you got anything for this? Any help? I busy, issues, need, focus, will. Josh, you okay?" Silence, only punctuated again by a bang, followed by the sound of bending metal, snapping Tumani out of waiting for a response. The safety the door was providing was quickly diminishing, giving a quick need for defensive actions. She had a gun, taking a moment to grab her weapon, and mentally went through the actions needed to fire the thing. Spicy end at problem, ammunition loaded, bang, safety, click, off, spicy end at problem, bang, ammunition loaded, safety off, pull trigger to fire, bang. The door finally caved in from the android's assault, the 3 remaining eyes glowing with a red malice, causing Tumani to jump slightly before taking aim and pulling the trigger. Click.